Good afternoon, Marcus.
Good afternoon, Dan.
Perhaps we start with just a brief introduction to Market Acumen.
So, sure. Well, Market Acumen is my own business. So it's freelance consulting services, ideally financial services, strategic consulting. That's the kind of work I do. My background's in financial markets trading. I've had experience of running businesses and multilateral trading facilities. So that's what I do. I offer my services to firms that require expertise in markets.
So obviously we've seen some of the heated discussions this morning, lots of talks of fragmentation, lots of talks about consolidation. What's the most interesting thing happening in your eyes then in markets at the moment?
Well, goodness, I think there's an awful lot going on at the moment. Collateral management's a big thing which is sort of coming out of left field. Now, most traders don't really seem to care too much about that directly, but the fact is it's going to affect their trading activity. In the absence of good quality collateral, in the future, trading will be restricted. Limitations will be set around trading activity. If you're not able to collateralize your positions correctly, you'll simply be limited in your business. So that's a major thing that's happening. It hasn't hit the market yet, and people, I think firms haven't quite got their heads around just how material this is going to be.
Why do you think that is?
Why they haven't actually got their heads around it so far?
Yes, precisely.
Okay, partly because the regulations are still a little bit of a way out, so it's going to take a little bit of time before we know exactly what's going on, but also because this is quite new to a lot of people. The collateral management processes and systems aren't necessarily easily available. So for example, I think you'd find if you asked the majority of investment banks today, do they actually know exactly what collateral they've got and where it is? In all honesty, I think they would probably answer you and say they're not actually at the end of the trading day 100% sure of what they've got or where it is. It's a complex process, lots of moving parts, and the systems aren't really available in the marketplace.
Do you think that's a yet then?
Yes, definitely. It's going to change, no question about it. The question is who's going to provide those services and also some of the additional services around that capability. So for example, if you're sitting there with a collection of bonds that are fairly low grade bonds that won't be accepted by a CCP, you've got to do something about that. So collateral transformation is something which is going to emerge going forward as well. And that's a service which is really in its infancy.
Which doesn't entirely surprise me. We've seen massive upheaval. It seems like the entire landscape on almost all fronts is is changing between cross-asset trading
yes.
and fragmentation and the need for CCPs, all the additional regulations on top of that with Dodd-Frank and EMIR and MiFID, et cetera, et cetera. How as a consultant, are you finding firms coping?
Well, they're coping really initially by sort of battening down the hatches. Volumes are poor, let's be honest about it. It's a tough trading environment at the moment, so people are looking at outsourcing. There's a lot of interest in outsourcing capabilities still, and that's moving further down the chain. So, for example, I was in asset management trading for about 17 years. If you'd have said, 10 years ago, we're going to outsource our buy-side trading desk, people would have thought you were barking mad. And yet it's actually happening now. It's becoming a very big business, and some of us have been expecting it to happen for years. It's really occurring. So that's the initial change, which is a lot of people looking at compressing costs and really trying to make their businesses more efficient. But then there's an element of people actually really genuinely looking to enhance their businesses with new opportunities. So I'm talking to a variety of investment banks at the moment that haven't yet got MTFs set up, but are actually very much looking to do so. So that's another change that's definitely on the way as well. So even though it's a hard market, there are some opportunities as well.
Now, as well as obviously talking to us now, you will at the end of the day be in a panel session. Perhaps if you could just tell us a little bit more about what you're going to be speaking about and what you in particular would like to bring to the table.
Sure. Well, one of the things we're going to be talking about is really whether the markets actually serve the end users very efficiently. And I hate to say it, I'm a little bit concerned about the way the markets have evolved over the last probably 5 to 10 years. Equities is in compression, and it's very easy to kind of point the finger at a particular type of trader and say that these are the bad guys. That's not really the problem. The problem is it's an ecosystem that's very, very complex, that has lots of moving parts, that's now being influenced in lots of weird ways. For example, regulation is incredibly complex coming in. It's very aggressive in some places. This won't necessarily improve the markets. It could be actually quite negative in terms of market behaviour. We're going to be talking about, in the panel session later, about just this whole change to the dynamics and who's being served. So, for example, if you look at the current state of equity markets, you know that there are very few IPOs coming out. I think we're currently on something like a 5-year low for initial public offerings in Europe. Europe itself has halved in the last few years compared to the rest of the world. Our IPOs coming out in Europe are incredibly low, and the ones that do come out aren't very successful. So, for example, we've had the Facebook debacle. We've also had the Megaphone one just recently, which has been really quite disastrous as well. So, sadly, when we think about efficiency of markets, if you think about it for capital raisers, the market's not necessarily doing a terrific job. Then when you think about it, the point of view of the end users, what we're seeing is asset managers moving away from active investment management styles to more passive styles. Now you could argue that's the cost efficiency for a client, but it tells you the whole dynamic of equities is changing. So when I think of markets, I'm thinking mostly of equities, of course. But having said that, you're going to see emergence in other areas. So I have a personal interest in other forms of market trading. So I'm looking at crowdfunding, for example, which is a fascinating business.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time. I believe people are starting to filter their way back in. So thank you very much for speaking with us. And of course, best of luck for the panel session.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.